Hello, my name is Austin. This will seem incredible to you, but what I'm about to tell you is true. A few years ago, I realized something and it was a shock to others, but for me, just my life. And it began uneasily, or rather, not quite as usual as many of you. I was born an old man. My parents got married at 43. They are the same age. They had a lot of health problems. My mother had to stay in hospitals to give birth to me, but they really wanted a baby. At first, everything went according to plan. When the due date came, my mother was admitted to the hospital and had a caesarean section. She couldn't give birth on her own because of doctors' concerns, so we decided to make it safe. And now, a boy weighing almost 4 kilograms was born. Everyone praised my mother for being able to bear a big baby. The doctors said that I didn't look like all newborns, and even then they noticed that I looked like a 1-month-old baby. My mother named me Austin after my grandfather, and I look like him, by the way. When we were released from the hospital, my mother devoted all her time to me. She didn't hire a nanny. She wanted to take care of herself. My father was on the contrary. He worked and provided for us. Every month, my mother took pictures of me and was surprised to see how much my appearance changed. I looked older and older. It wasn't until 6 months later that I started to get hair on my head, which scared my mother, because they were gray. My father said it was just the color of my hair, but my mother didn't believe me and took me to the hospital. I took tests, after which the doctors collected almost a consultation. They couldn't believe what their eyes were seeing. They thought that the tests were mixed up and asked to take a second one. Only then did they finally tell my mother that I was in poor health. Your son has tests like an old man. He has a weak body, which is why he is so slow to develop. He is weak and lacks vitamins, they told their mother. They also added that I probably won't live a year, but they were wrong. After these conversations, my mother began to feed me healthy food. In addition to milk, she bought vitamins, often walked with me in the fresh air, gave me water, and did a full-body massage every day. I was growing up. I was already 2 years old. My mother believed that it was a miracle and because of her faith in the best. Even though I looked like a real old man, she loved me. I had a wrinkled body. I could barely walk. I only had a few teeth, and I spoke slowly and quietly. Everyone laughed at us, including the neighbors, what they didn't say behind our backs. Finally, my mother's patience ran out, and she and my father decided to move somewhere else to save me from gossip. They chose a place far away from the city, where there were no neighbors, mostly fields nearby. I spent my entire childhood there, the three of us living together and never letting anyone else into my life. Despite my frightening appearance, my mom and dad loved me very much, as I loved them. And now I was 10 years old. By that time, I was stronger, taller, more confident. My father taught me to read and write. I talked at full speed, and my vision improved. I tried to help my parents with household chores. I didn't really play with the children, just because I was bored with them. I liked to sit with my parents at dinner and talk. My mother watched my new achievements and was happy. Later, they decided that I was just special. And the fact was that my body was growing and getting younger. Over the years, I became taller, more beautiful, younger. My wrinkles disappeared from my face. My teeth grew. My bones got stronger. I felt it. My hair had grown on my head, and it wasn't gray, but black, and it glistened and curled slightly. Closer to 17, I looked 30 years old, and it was fantastic. Parents also did not keep in touch with anyone, so that there were no unnecessary questions. We lived our lives, that's all. I also studied at home, actively helped my father with chores, and my mother around the house. The only bad thing was that my parents were getting older, unlike me. It was sad to watch them grow old. Their hair turns gray, they become weaker, their memory, body, and brain become weaker. My mother explained that this is a normal process and always reminded me how our body works. Then one day they decided to take me to the city. My parents showed me that the whole world did not agree on our house. They showed and told me that there are other people. There are many of them. Everyone has their own life. They showed me that there are buildings almost up to the sky, supermarkets, metro, taxis. I, of course, did not grow up a savage. I saw everything on TV, but live, I saw it for the first time. In my subconscious, I knew that they were doing all this for a reason. They were preparing me for an independent life, because whenever I was, I would be left alone. After that day, they often asked me to drive myself. So I learned more and more about the world and watched everything with great interest. A year later, I met a girl named Victoria, and we are now dating. Victoria knows about me. I showed her the photo, and she talked to my mother. Oddly enough, she was not afraid of my natural origin. On the contrary, I am also special to her. I found a job in the city, although I don't have a higher education, but I am physically strong, so I found a job where I need to work. I got a job as a loader in a company. Every year I feel a surge of strength and energy, and I'm glad that I found the right channel where I can direct it. A year later, my parents died, and I got younger. Victoria persuaded me to sell my house and move to the city so that we could work and live together in peace. I agreed. I bought a small apartment where we lived together. Vicky was actually older than me, even though we looked about the same age. Although, to be honest, I don't know how old I really am. We both worked and were happy, but we couldn't have children. We got engaged and started treatment, and we went to all the hospitals, but it wasn't about her, it was about me. We decided not to lose heart, but to save money for one medical procedure. So another 4 years passed. I became noticeably younger, and Victoria aged. Every night, she would look in the mirror and wipe away her tears when I approached, but I could see that she was upset. I couldn't help it. Vicky said that she would like to stop time, but our life clock is ticking in different directions and it's hard for her. I knew I was taking up her time, so I decided to leave. In the morning, I packed my things and never saw her again. No, I loved her very much, but I just can't bear to see her wasting her life with me. Seeing you grow old and your man grow younger must be terrible. Since then, I've decided to live on my own. Since I don't have any children and can't have any, I left my apartment to her and went off on my own. I've been around 10 states, and I've lived in each of them for a while, but I didn't stay long enough to tie myself to people or them to me. It's more convenient when you belong only to yourself. How old am I now, you may ask, but to tell you the truth, I don't know. My face looked like a teenager, and I even got pimples. I do not know what will happen next. Perhaps at some point my body will just fall asleep. Now I am more and more often ill with the flu or a cold. I think the thing is that my body is once again being rebuilt. I am grateful to my parents for accepting me like this, teaching me how to live, survive, and fully prepare me for independence. You know, I've heard that there's a similar story, like mine is almost exactly the same, but it's real. I don't want a lot of fame or gossip around me, because I will be uncomfortable, much more comfortable to live like this, quietly and peacefully. I plan to continue traveling in the company of myself. One thing is good when you're young. A lot of things seem so accessible, and it helps me not to sit still. Who knows? I may have seen you, and you may have seen me. I've worked everywhere. So, friends, live happily ever after, and most importantly, value your time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jung. I'm an only child in my own right, but every time I go out in public with my mom, they say, "What a beautiful sister you have." The thing is, my mother looks 20 years old. Once it got in my way. My mother's name is Kim, and our age difference is 20 years, so she is now 36. My mom always looked great. For as long as I can remember, she's been wearing makeup in the morning and in the evening. My father admires her beauty every day, and my mother says that it's all about blood. We are Koreans. We age slowly outwardly. And then literally in one day, we are closer to old age. I believed her because I had a clear example before my eyes. My mother and I were about the same height, 160 centimeters, but I was a little plumper, and my mother is slim. I was already used to loud compliments to her every time we went to the stores or to the market for food. At first, I didn't think it was because my mom looked great, but rather that I didn't look great. But then she found out that she was told that in any society. And then I began to take advantage of this. A young mother is a mother who understands. She taught me how to use cosmetics and bought a separate one for me, for young skin. She allowed me to wear her things, shoes, and made me beautiful hairstyles without any problems. I love to record videos and post everything online. My mother never refused to participate in commercials. She had a great sense of humor and sang divinely. We didn't look much alike. I looked more like my father. I only shared my secrets about guys with her. I knew that she would always support and give good advice. Just recently, I met a guy named Lin. He was new in our class. Oh, all my classmates noticed such a handsome boy. And oddly enough, he began to communicate more with me than anyone else. There was no limit to my happiness. We sat together in class, and every day he brought me some fruit for lunch. It's the cutest thing you can think of. Lynn started courting me and returned the favor. I told my mother about our first kiss, and she wished me luck and told me not to lose my head. I knew she was happy for me, even though she was very worried. Lynn and I went on dates 1 to 2 times a week, to the movies, to cafes, or just for a walk. We always had something to talk about. I fell more and more in love with him. Once, he even wrote a song in my honor and sang it when we were sitting in the park at sunset. It was beautiful. Then came my birthday. Lynn and I decided to celebrate with friends at the club. He promised to pick me up in the evening, told me to be ready by 7. All day, my mother and I ran around looking for an outfit for me, and I found the perfect dress and shoes. I couldn't wait to show my favorite guy. "You're just a princess," my mother said as she helped me get ready for the party. She gave me one last hug, and I just had to put the finishing touches on it. The bell rang in the house, and my mother ran to open the door. It was my lover. Beaming with happiness and sequins, I went down the stairs. My mother was just talking to him about something. I kissed her on the cheek, and we went to the club. "You didn't say you had a sister," Lynn said on the way. "I don't have one. It's my mother," I said. His face changed in an instant. It was evident that he was shocked. "Your mom? She looks so young," he said. I reassured him by telling him that he wasn't the first person to say that. The evening was fun and easy, except that Lynn was acting a little strange. Not as usual. "Is everything all right?" I asked him when we parted, but he assured me that everything was fine. All the time that followed, Lynn seemed to be thinking about something. He skipped questions, often got confused in the answers, always thinking about something. I told my mother about it, and she suggested that I invite him to dinner with us. It was a great idea. We made dinner, and Lynn came in time. Dad was on a business trip at the time, so the 3 of us spent the evening together. "This is for you," he said, handing a bunch of flowers to my mom. She was flattered and politely thanked him. "Why are you dressed up like this? We're not going to a restaurant," I told him and laughed. He was embarrassed. This evening, I saw it from the other side, as it is. Strange, unusual. Lynn talked a lot, asked my mother a million questions, and laughed. I suddenly felt that the evening was passing me by. You are familiar with the phrase, third extra? So this is about me. Then, Lynn left without even kissing me. My mood sank at the end. My mother started asking questions about what had happened, because everything was wonderful. "Didn't I tell you we didn't have any secrets?" So I told her to her face. "I think he's got a crush on you," I told her. My mother's eyes almost popped out of her head in surprise, but I still had an unpleasant feeling in my heart. I couldn't stop thinking that I was right. How disgusting is it that your boyfriend falls in love with your mother? Ugh. What should I do now? After half an hour of denial, my mother finally gave up. She said it was a ridiculous situation and she was embarrassed. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I'm sorry," she said, but I knew that it wasn't my mother's fault. Lynn called the next day. I had a dry chat with him, and he said he would come to visit me. "No, I want to go for a walk," I said curtly. I heard that he was upset, but I didn't care. In the evening, I went out to him on the street, and we went to the park. He asked almost nothing about me, but he asked 1,000 questions about my mother. Then I broke down and exploded. I was filled with jealousy, anger, stupidity of the situation. "Can you stop talking about my mom? Aren't you ashamed at all? She is my mother, and you are openly hitting on her," I shouted at him. Lynn strenuously denied it. "You thought I was being polite and paying more attention to her. I wanted to make a positive impression, nothing more," he said, but I didn't believe him. I knew too well when he was lying. The problem was that I fell head over heels in love with this guy, but I knew that such a relationship would not go far. Gathering my thoughts, I took a deep breath and said we should break up. Lynn was sad, but I was also hurt. I called a taxi and went home hysterical. My mother calmed me for a long time. She comforted me with gentle strokes on the head. I didn't realize I'd fallen asleep. All of a sudden, I had a dream about my mom getting a divorce from my dad and marrying my ex-boyfriend. "Oh no, this is terrible. This can't be happening," I screamed. I woke up screaming, a lump in my throat, my hands shaking. And suddenly, I heard my mother arguing with someone. I crept out into the hall and saw Lynn standing outside the door, and my mother talking to him. He is holding a bouquet of flowers. I moved closer to hear the conversation. I couldn't believe it. "He confessed his love for her, you bastard!" My mother told him sternly that he was old enough to be a father, that he was not worthy of her daughter, and that he should get out of our lives once and for all. She was so angry, and then she took the flowers from his hands and threw them away. "Go away and don't come back," she screamed. What was it like for me? It was awful, disgusting, and bad. But despite the situation, my relationship with my mother has not changed. I realized that Lynn was just not the right person for me. What would you do if you were me? Write an answer in the comments and subscribe to this channel. There are still a lot of more interesting stories to come.